She's the Secretary of State preparing to run for president. He's an unemployed journalist who just quit his job on principle and lives in his friend's basement. When they start dating, the entire world loses its mind, not because of a scandal, but because he doesn't look the part. This is the story of what happens when love collides with image, when authenticity threatens ambition, and when the most powerful woman in the world falls for the least impressive guy in the room. Welcome back to Scene Summary. Today I'm going to show you a sharp, hilarious romantic comedy that asks a dangerous question. What if being yourself is the one thing that destroys everything you love? Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Meet Fred Flarsky. Right now, he's dangling from a building trying not to die, dressed as a Nazi, with his cover blown and angry white supremacists chasing. This is somehow not even the craziest thing that'll happen to him this month. But here's what you need to know about Fred. He's the kind of journalist who goes undercover at hate group meetings because he actually believes in exposing the truth. He's idealistic to a fault, stubborn as hell, and absolutely terrible at playing it safe, which is why 3 days after this near-death experience, he quits his job at a newspaper he's worked at for years. Why? Because the paper just got bought by a media conglomerate run by a guy Fred hates. And Fred, being Fred, would rather be unemployed and morally pure than compromise his principle. His editor thinks he's insane. His best friend Lance thinks he's insane. He's probably insane. So now Fred's jobless, living in Lance's guest room and spiraling into an existential crisis about his entire life. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Charlotte Field is everything Fred isn't: polished, powerful, and in complete control. She's the youngest Secretary of State in American history, Rhodes Scholar, Pulitzer Prize winner, and the woman everyone assumes will be the next president. When she walks into a room, heads turn. When she speaks, people listen. She's brilliant, she's driven, and she's absolutely terrifying in the best way possible. But there's a problem. President Chambers, the guy who made her Secretary of State, is stepping down. He's not running for re-election, and he's not backing Charlotte either. He wants to become a movie star. Seriously, the President of the United States wants to leave politics to pursue his acting career, which means Charlotte has one shot to run for president on her own terms. But she needs something big, a cause that'll make her unforgettable, something that shows she's not just smart and competent, but that she actually cares about real people. She's been pushing for an environmental initiative, a global plan to reduce carbon emissions to zero. It's ambitious, it's controversial, and nobody thinks she can pull it off, but Charlotte's not the type to give up. Now, here's where things get weird. Fred ends up at a fancy party with Lance, who's dating a rich guy throwing the event. Fred's uncomfortable, out of place, wearing his usual wrinkled jacket while everyone else looks like they stepped out of a magazine, and then he sees her, Charlotte. At first, he can't believe it, but it's definitely her, his babysitter from when he was 13, the girl he had the most intense, awkward, all-consuming crush on, the person who was kind to him when nobody else was. She used to let him help her practice speeches for student council elections. She'd talk to him like he mattered, and now she's the Secretary of State. Fred does what any rational person would do. He panics, tries to leave, and accidentally makes eye contact with her across the room. She recognizes him, waves him over, and suddenly, Fred's talking to the most powerful woman in America like it's just another Tuesday. They catch up. She's warm, surprisingly down to earth. She remembers him, actually remembers specific things about him, like the recycling speech she practiced in her treehouse while he watched, completely mesmerized. For a moment, it feels like no time has passed at all. Then she makes him an offer that changes everything. She needs a speechwriter, someone who can make her sound authentic, passionate, and real. Not like a politician reading talking points, someone who writes the way people actually think and feel. She's read Fred's articles. She knows he's talented, and more importantly, she knows he's honest. Fred thinks she's joking, but she's dead serious. She wants him on her team, traveling with her, writing speeches for her environmental campaign. It's insane. It's impossible. It makes no sense. He says yes. What happens next is a whirlwind. Fred gets thrown into Charlotte's world. Private jets, international summits, 5-star hotels, and a schedule so packed he barely has time to breathe. Her team is skeptical. Maggie, her chief of staff, looks at Fred like he's a stain on the carpet. Tom, her strategist, keeps asking if Charlotte's sure about this, but Charlotte sees something in Fred that nobody else does. She sees someone who hasn't been corrupted by ambition yet, someone who still believes words matter, that integrity matters. And slowly, impossibly, they start connecting. Late-night writing sessions turn into deep conversations. Shared frustration with politics turns into shared laughter. Charlotte starts letting her guard down around Fred, showing him the person she is when the cameras aren't rolling. And Fred realizes that underneath all the power and polish, she's still the girl from the treehouse, smart, and trying to do the right thing in a world that punishes you for it. And then they kiss. It's unexpected, impulsive, and absolutely the worst possible decision for both their careers. But it's also real, more real than anything either of them has felt in years. So they start dating, in secret at first. Because how do you explain this? The Secretary of State and an unemployed journalist with terrible fashion sense and a habit of saying exactly what he thinks. Her team would freak out. The media would destroy them, so they keep it quiet. But here's where things get complicated. Maggie pulls Charlotte aside with new polling data. They've asked 1,000 people how they'd feel if Princess Diana started dating Guy Fieri, or Kate Middleton dating Danny DeVito, or Jennifer Lawrence dating, in Maggie's words, a potato in a teal windbreaker. The results? People would be very upset. The public doesn't like Charlotte dating Fred, not because he's a bad person, but because of the optics, because he doesn't photograph well next to her. Maggie wants Charlotte to think about what she's putting on the line for what she calls a hookup. She tells Charlotte the relationship will make a presidential run very challenging. She points out Fred's written some extremely controversial stuff. Charlotte corrects her. He's exposed really messed up stuff, which is different. Maggie even suggests keeping Fred as a secret mistress. There's a guy in the Secret Service who handles these arrangements. Tunnels in the White House Woodrow Wilson used. Charlotte shuts that down immediately, but the question's been planted. How much is Charlotte willing to sacrifice? Then there's another problem. A video surfaces, an old recording of Fred in a compromising position. It's embarrassing and being used as blackmail. If Charlotte doesn't back off from exposing corruption, the video goes public. Charlotte's terrified of how people will react. She can't take that risk with her campaign, so she tells Fred they need a different plan. They'll work with a consultant who can scrub his internet history, make sure nothing else pops up, and then they'll work on his image, figure out how to present themselves as a couple to the public. Fred asks how long that'll take. Charlotte says maybe a couple months, but Fred pushes back. A couple months could turn into longer, and meanwhile, she's pretending not to date him, scrubbing his internet history so his articles disappear, sneaking him around like Marilyn Monroe and JFK, and they're doing all of this because he's not right, because the version of him they'd eventually present wouldn't actually be him. Charlotte admits that's basically the plan, and Fred says 5 words that end everything. I can't do it. He wishes he was the type of person who could, but he's not. He can't pretend to be someone else. He can't erase his work. He can't hide who he is. Charlotte tells him he doesn't have to, but they both know what that means. So Fred leaves, and Charlotte throws herself into the campaign. She tells herself she made the right choice, that politics requires sacrifice, that she can't save the world and keep Fred too, but something's broken. She's doing everything right, giving speeches, shaking hands, following the script. Then comes her big speech, the one launching her presidential campaign, the moment she's dreamed about since childhood. She's on stage, talking about how that young girl would feel seeing her now, and suddenly she can't do it anymore. She goes completely off script. She tells the audience that little girl would actually be disappointed in her, that she'd want Charlotte to be honest and have integrity, and not be blackmailed by evil people with evil agendas. So Charlotte tells the truth, all of it. She reveals the corruption. She tells everyone about the blackmail. She tells them they're going to release a video of a guy she dated, and then she says something that shocks everyone. Don't slut shame me. I like him. I like him a lot. She addresses the video directly, says the guy in it does that, and so do all of them, so deal with it. It's the most honest, unpolished, real moment Charlotte's had in years, and Fred's watching from home. He sees the woman he fell in love with standing on that stage, refusing to apologize for who she is. So he runs to her. He shows up at her hotel. Charlotte sees him and says, "Here's the deal. I love you. I know I do because I've never been so scared in my entire life. And I once shared an elevator with Saddam Hussein, just me and Saddam. And this is way scarier." Fred finally speaks. "I've been in love with you since I was 12 years old." They kiss, for real this time. And then Charlotte does something that would have been unthinkable days earlier. She brings Fred outside to face the reporters. She introduces him as her boyfriend, tells everyone he's going to be right by her side on her campaign trail. The crowd goes wild. The movie ends with Charlotte being sworn in as President of the United States. Fred's standing next to her. Still himself, still the guy in the rumpled jacket with strong opinions and messy hair. Her poll numbers, they're fine, maybe even better than before. Turns out people like authenticity when it's genuine, and Fred finally has a job he's good at, helping the woman he loves stay true to herself even when the whole world's watching. Would you change who you are for the person you love, or would you risk everything to stay authentic? Subscribe to Scene Summary for more romantic comedies that actually have something to say. Hit that notification bell and drop a like if this one made you think twice about what love really means.